Well, it's another sharp twist in the ongoing US-China trade war. And this time, Boeing finds itself squarely in the crosshairs. The Chinese government has reportedly instructed its airlines not to take delivery of any Boeing aircraft, escalating tensions just as the American planemaker hoped to clear out its lingering inventory of jets. Let's take a look for today's video. According to an exclusive report from Bloomberg, the Chinese government has quietly told its state and private airlines to halt deliveries of Boeing aircraft. The directive comes as trade tensions between China and the United States intensify, part of the tit-for-tat tariff war that's been unfolding since April. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how aircraft orders work in China, there's an extra layer of control compared to Western markets. The National Development and Reform Commission, or NDRC, essentially holds the authority to approve or block deliveries for Chinese carriers. And Bloomberg's sources suggest this move wasn't just spontaneous. It came shortly after China retaliated against the US with heightened tariffs on American-made goods. Adding to the intrigue, the report also notes that Beijing is mulling over potential aid measures to ease the financial burden on airlines leasing Boeing jets, helping them cope with the rising costs of those leases. This flare-up traces back to early April, when the U.S., under the Trump administration, reignited the trade war by slapping a 10% tariff on goods from all countries. But China was clearly the primary target. On April 2nd, Trump dubbed the new policy Liberation Day, blaming China's so-called non-market policies for the U.S. losing roughly 3.7 million jobs between 2001 and 2018. Things escalated quickly from there. By April 8th, tariffs on Chinese goods skyrocketed from 34% to a staggering 84%. China, not one to back down, matched the hike with identical rates. And here's where Boeing's situation gets more technical but very important. The manufacturer has been sitting on a stockpile of so-called inventoried aircraft. These are planes built before 2023 but never delivered to airlines, often due to regulatory or logistical delays. During the Bank of America Global Industrials Conference back on March 19th, Boeing's executive vice president and CFO, Brian West, revealed that the company's so-called shadow factory for the 737 MAX, essentially a storage hub for completed but undelivered aircraft, was working hard to move these jets out to customers. The plan was to shut down this shadow factory by this summer once the backlog was cleared. West also mentioned that the 787 Dreamliner shadow factory had already been shut down, though deliveries for some of those wide bodies would likely stretch into early 2026, mainly due to customer fleet planning strategies. And earlier, during Boeing's fourth quarter of 2024 earnings call on January 28th, President and CEO Kelly Ortberg shared that the company still had 55 MAX 8 aircraft in its inventory, built prior to 2023, with the bulk of them destined for Chinese and Indian airlines. On top of that, there were another 25 undelivered 787 Dreamliners in the same situation. And here's some perspective on Boeing's China portfolio. According to Boeing's own orders and deliveries data, the company currently holds 6,319 unfilled gross orders worldwide. Of those, only 130 are for Chinese airlines. That's a mere 2% of Boeing's global backlog. Meanwhile, Aviation data shows another 35 aircraft intended for Chinese carriers have already completed their first flights between January 2019 and March 2025. For contrast, Airbus seems to be in a more favorable position. Chinese airlines have 332 Airbus aircraft on order, not counting those managed by aircraft lessors. And so far this year, Airbus has already delivered 37 planes to Chinese carriers. According to the International Air Transport Association, China is the second largest domestic aviation market on the planet, trailing only the US. So, what do you think? Is this latest move by China a simple negotiation tactic, or is Boeing facing a long-term decoupling from one of the world's most important aviation markets? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. Thank you.